morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, hello. I'm not sure when you're listening to this, but you are listening to the Portsmouth Proud podcast. I'm your host, Alexia Washington, the Public Information Officer for P-Town's finest, the Portsmouth, Virginia Police Department. We serve a community that's not too far from the ocean, not too far from the bay, right on the river, and we're producing this podcast for you, for the people of Portsmouth, so that you know what the vision is from the PPD for the city as it pertains to law enforcement, as well as the plan and how you can play a part in it. This is episode 9 of the Portsmouth Proud podcast, and today's episode is a little different. It's part recap and part explanation, but altogether informative, so stay tuned. Since we started this podcast 8 weeks ago, people have asked why. Why have we started a podcast? Well, we started a podcast because PPD leadership wanted to tell our own stories. The story of Portsmouth cannot be told in 10 to 15 second sound bites for the news, nor can it be fully understood by reading a topical long-form print feature. No, Portsmouth requires an anthology, a collection of stories and cultural artifacts that offer a variety of perspectives and histories in order to be captured. So with this podcast, we aim to be at times informative and educational, at other times inspirational, but overall, we hope to provide engaging content that shines the appropriate light on the remarkable city on the river, which is Portsmouth. And Portsmouth is remarkable, a remarkable city made up of remarkable people whose stories and work often go untold. Right before sitting down to record, I witnessed a man stop traffic in true Hallmark Channel form to help an elderly man cross the street to catch the bus. I witnessed this right after making sure that the heroic actions of 2 PPD officers would be recognized for helping rescue a man from a burning vehicle. Extraordinary people. Since May, we've recorded 8 episodes and introduced audiences to different aspects of policing, as well as a variety of offerings of the city. In episode 2, we sat down with Dr. Nathan Woodard, the Director of Behavioral Health Care Services, to talk about the agency's offerings, but also where they and law enforcement work together. Take a listen to part of our conversation.
Working for a community services board, you're working for those persons that oftentimes don't have the resources or the means to get their needs met. We have persons that are recovering from mental health and substance use disorders, that have family, that may have insurances, that may have homes, that may have entitlements, so forth and so on. Not to say it's easy for them, but it's easier than someone that doesn't have a home. Someone that doesn't have benefits, someone that don't have that family connection. So that's one of the things that really drew me to wanting to work in the public mental health arena.
That's true. So there's different factors that might make counseling services or inaccessible to some populations. So that's kind of like a good segue to discussing behavioral health care services as the agency. The agency started in 1969,
Yep.
And it's to provide mental health, intellectual disability, substance abuse, and co-occurring services to the citizens of Portsmouth. I'd like to take a little time just to define these particular terms, because between BetterHelp commercials and
Sure.
self-care podcasts, I know for me it might be a little bit confused on what exactly is meant when we say mental health. So can you
Sure.
define what is mental health?
Absolutely. Mental health at its essence is any type of feeling that you have that can give you those highs or give you those lows. You have individuals say they have what's called seasonal depression. Christmas time, when it gets dark early, they find themselves feeling a little different. Likewise, during the summertime, when you have a lot of sun, you have individuals that may feel a little out of whack. But those are the everyday mental health issues. We really talk about mental health wellness. You may feel burnout at your job.
Okay.
You may be putting in 50 plus hours of work, so you may be feeling stress from that. Maybe feeling stress from things that are happening at your home, husband, wife, kids,
Okay.
and so forth. So that's what we look at as being basic mental health.
Okay.
But mental health mental health, the diagnosis of mental health comes from what's called the DSM-5, TR. And this is a serious mental illness. Some of those serious mental illnesses include, but not excluded, is bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, psychotic disorder, and so forth. And those are the individuals that we see at the Department of Behavioral Health Care Services, the majority of. If someone doesn't have a serious mental illness, then we try to refer them out to a private provider that can meet their needs. But we want to see those persons that are really having issues. These issues have or may lead to them being hospitalized. They may or have led to them being in and out of the correctional centers. So we want to do whatever we can to help mitigate from those issues or problems happening.
Okay, so mental health is any of those feelings of highs and lows, and I didn't know that people had they were seasonally affected in the summer, because you normally hear about it in the fall or in the winter time, but that happens in the summer. And then with the CSB, you're working with those who might have bouts or are experiencing mental illness. So those are more of the disorders that we are familiar with in regular conversation. Okay.
Yep.
So what do we mean when we say intellectual disability?
Intellectual disability, or what we call it now, is developmental disability. This is a diagnosis that typically someone is born with. They are born with the functioning less than the average person. They may not have the abilities to walk, to talk, to live independently. Typically, a person that is born with intellectual disability or developmental disability are diagnosed before the age of 18. You also have some persons, if you look at developmental disability, they may have what's called a traumatic brain injury. We have a lot of persons that are have developmental disabilities that have had accidents. A lot of our soldiers that come from coming from conflicts around the world may have gotten injured by an IED or something. So all of that is clumped into what we call developmental disabilities now, which was intellectual disabilities.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So we're probably all familiar, or at least think we're familiar with what substance abuse is, but just because of this conversation, can you define that as well? What is substance abuse?
Absolutely. And substance abuse, one of the things that I love to talk to the public about substance abuse, because we often look at substance use or substance abuse as something that the person is doing that they want to happen, or that is something that happened because you brought it on yourself. Number one, substance use is a medical disorder. Similar as cancer, similar as heart disease, high blood pressure, and we should treat it as such. So you have persons that can be addicted to different type of substances. That may be marijuana, that may be alcohol, that may be heroin, that may be cocaine. So there are programs that we have that assist in those, such as our MAT program, which is medications assistance treatment. We also provide individual and group therapy. So substance use, again, diagnosis, you can be addicted to several different substances, but those that I mentioned earlier are the most common.
And so I'm glad that you define that. So substance use is a medical disorder.
Yes.
And that's important for us to be able to empathize with people and, family members that you might be struggling, which you might know who may be struggling, just being able to understand that how would you treat that person if they had cancer, or if they had any other thing that we're more familiar with, that you should have that same compassion when you're interacting with that person as you would with others. So that's important. Thank you for defining that. Now, co-occurrences. With the people that you're working with, how often do these things overlap? How often are there co-occurrences between someone who might have a mental illness with the intellectual disability?
It's highly likely. The majority, and I would beg to say probably anywhere from 85 to 95% of the individuals that we serve at Behavioral Health Care Services have a co-occurring disorder. Oftentimes, that co-occurring disorder consists of a serious mental illness and substance use disorder.
Okay.
And the reason being, we find a lot of people that are recovering from a mental health disorder, especially as our population, they don't have, as I spoke about earlier, they don't have the resources for medication.
Right.
So the first thing that they try to do is self-medicate. And they try to self-medicate, whether it's with alcohol, whether it's heroin, cocaine, and so forth. And then they become dependent on that substance. And at the whole time, they still are trying to deal with this mental health issue that they had as well. So now they're dealing with both issues.
Right.
Hence, a co-occurring disorder.
Can you talk about how trauma impacts development, or how trauma can impact a mental illness?
Absolutely. First of all, I like to say trauma is oftentimes very loosely used.
True.
A traumatic event for one person, for the next person, could be just an issue.
Okay.
So trauma is really how that individual, a traumatic event is how that individual perceives it, sees it, and has dealt with it. With that said, trauma plays a big role in the development of a mental health or substance use disorder. Again, if not given the proper attention, whether that's with counseling, therapy, in some cases with medication, that individual will turn to or could turn to using substances as well to help to deal with those traumatic issues.
So let's talk forensics. What exactly is an emergency custody order?
An emergency custody order is a mandate from the state that allows a family member or a neighbor or someone else in the community to go to the magistrate's office if we have an individual that has exacerbated symptoms due to their mental illness. With this emergency custody order, the magistrate of that locality has to issue it.
Okay.
With the magistrate issuing that emergency custody order, the local PD will then go and get that person and take them to the community services board or to a emergency room.
Okay.
Whichever is closest. At that time, there will be a crisis worker that will do an assessment of the individual. But in order to get that process started, you must have an emergency custody order issued through the magistrate's office first. Okay,
so you said a person from the community or your family member. Would a police officer, say if there's someone there's disorderly conduct, they've been called to the scene for that, would this be an avenue that they would take if they're not trying to, the person is acting, for lack of a better word, off, and they don't want to necessarily arrest the person or book them through the regular process? Would this be when they would try to get an emergency custody order so you can test them or evaluate them?
Matter of fact, with the police officers, it's a little more simpler.
Oh, okay.
They can do what's called a paperless ECO.
Okay.
So they don't have to go down to the magistrate's office and explain to the magistrate what they've seen and what they've heard and why an ECO is needed. They have their authority as a as a law enforcement officer to do a paperless ECO. Then they can take that person directly to the community services board, ER, and so forth, crisis receiving center, to get an evaluation done.
Dr. Woodard was an amazing guest, and I encourage you to listen to the full episode. Dr. Woodard's conversation was followed by our discussion with Lieutenant Smaglo, the lead over special investigations, as well as the lead officer over our wellness efforts for the department. Both episodes discuss the importance of creating systems and practices that promote wellness and mental health. If you or a family member are struggling, you can call 988, a free national hotline for times when you need someone to talk to. You can visit the Portsmouth Behavioral Healthcare Services, which is located on King Street, or by calling 393-5357. Services are affordable and based on income. This is the perfect place to take our first break, and when we return, we'll talk about community programs.
Are you considering a career in law enforcement? Sign on today as a Portsmouth police officer and receive up to $1,500 if you're already Virginia certified. We offer a $1,000 allowance for a bachelor's degree and a $500 allowance for an associate's degree on top of your base pay. Officers can also earn additional income on time spent in court and at community events. Visit our website at portsmouthpd.us for more information on how to apply.
National Night Out will be here before you know it, so mark your calendars for Tuesday, August 6th, and join us at Festival Park for the ultimate community gathering. That's August 6th from 3 to 8 p.m. at Festival Park. See you at National Night Out. So we're back. Before the break, we gave a brief explanation of the purpose of the Portsmouth Proud podcast and shared an excerpt from episode 2 with the Director of Behavioral Healthcare Services. Portsmouth has so many different offerings for residents. During the summer, the city hosts Sunset Thursdays, weekly concert series with food and fun. Parks and Rec offers affordable weekly summer raise summer camp program. PPD officers from Community Enhancement Division host the Police Athletic League summer camp, which is free for families. We sat with the lead of that division in episode 7, Sergeant Funkhauser, where we discussed how programs like PAL Summer Camp and GREAT, which is the anti-gang program for elementary students, are part of crime prevention strategies. So, active communities have neighborhoods with involved neighbors are less susceptible to crime. So it's important that you participate. This is why Sergeant Funkhauser has dedicated so much time to planning National Night Out, which she refers to as a crime going away party. I just want to give a little bit of history about National Night Out. So it was established in 1984. It's an annual community building campaign. It's an event that promotes police and community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie. Millions of neighbors take part in this event across hundreds or even thousands of communities in all 50 states, in our U.S. territories, and military bases around the world. And it's usually held on that first Tuesday in August. Our city has participated in nearly every year since 1984. Actually, in 2022, we placed 7th in the nation for our event, and 2nd in the state of Virginia. Portsmouth, we placed 2nd in the state of Virginia. And we hope that this year's event will be bigger and better than ever. And that would be doing a lot because in 2023, we had 6,000 people participate. This year, Sergeant Funkhauser has more than 25 vendors participating. A variety of churches, civic leagues, and different businesses from across the area are participating. We're going to have Portsmouth Humane Society will be there, Centera Mobile Health Vehicle, so there's also education that's going to be there on that night. Bounce houses, we even have a dunk tank. We have games. We have a wonderful band called Second Wind. There's even going to be like a military flyover. There'll be raffles and free popcorn, snow cones, cotton candy. There's a car show. We'll have food trucks. It's just going to be a lot of fun. There's even a photo booth, and we just want you to participate. Community Enhancement, which is who oversees, again, this National Night Out, works in collaboration with other city agencies to make neighborhoods safer by suggesting physical improvements happen on streets. So like lights are out, they are pointing it out, let's get it fixed. A house has been abandoned, let's board it up. There's overgrowth, we need to cut these things down. I'm not creating an environment that attracts people that don't belong there. This was further expounded on in episode 8 with Assistant Chief Prince, as he talked about community policing, specifically PI, which is prevention, intervention, and enforcement. He had a lot of little sayings that helps you remember different aspects of policing. I encourage you to go back and look at episode 8. And he talked about he talked about community policing and how community-oriented policing allows officers to primarily focus on law enforcement, on enforcing the law, by being able to direct residents in need to the appropriate departments within the city. This is how we come up with a program like Rock the Block, which was discussed in episode 6 with Peter Glagola. He's the Director of Marketing and Communication for the city. And here's a snippet of that conversation. So what role does your department play in like community revitalization projects? I think there's something called Rock the Block that the city is participating in. Does that fall under revitalization of like neighborhoods?
Yes, it does. We are restarting our Rock the Block program. Mm-hmm. It was started by a previous city manager.
Okay.
And we had all the logos, information, and imagery already done, so we decided not to change the name. But what we're going to be doing differently this time is we're going to, as a city, come to a neighborhood. We're going to pick certain streets in the neighborhood, and we are going to work on fixing issues. Now, issues could include, that when we're in the neighborhood, we're walking through the streets, we notice that a storm drain might be clogged with leaves and debris. Mm-hmm. So instead of writing it down, we're going to have all the equipment there to clean that storm drain out.
Oh, okay.
We're also going to be looking at street signs. Are street signs blocked by trees, or are they leaning, or are they old? If they are, we're going to be replacing them. Also, are there any potholes or issues with the road?
Okay.
So if there's a pothole, we're going to be fixing it while we're out there. Street lights, we can identify what street lights don't work. And,
right.
Of course, we're going to be talking with residents when we're in the neighborhoods, finding out what their concerns are. We'll be knocking on their doors as well. And if they say, oh, by the way, that street light doesn't work over there, Dominion Energy or Dominion Power is the one that fixes the street light. So we create a list and we write down the pole, etc. And then, of course, there's always trash removal.
Yeah.
There might be some bulk trash that needs to be moved. But what we're doing this time is when we leave, the projects or issues that we see will be resolved if we can resolve them that day. Okay. We're planning on being in the neighborhood from 9 in the morning till 3 p.m. It will be a lot of city employees. We're going to invite all of our civic leagues, and we hope too that neighbors will come out and assist us in identifying issues or helping clean up the area.
Okay,
so it's a little bit different from last time where we just came out, we talked to residents, and we cleaned up the neighborhood. This time you are going to know the city was there.
Okay, so there is volunteers are welcome.
That's correct. Yes.
To come out. This is getting pushed out to the local civic organizations, as well as local city nonprofits. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and we're going to be advertising on all of our social media platforms and our website so that people know what day we're coming, what areas we're going to be working in, etc. So there's going to be a lot of communication before we come to the neighborhood.
Now, is the first one happening this summer?
The first one is going to be on July 17th.
July 17th, okay.
And that is going to be in Prentice Park. What we've also done is created a year schedule.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we're going to do a Rock the Block event every other month. So, of course, July 17th is Prentice Park. September 18th is going to be Truxton. November 6th, because Thanksgiving's coming later in the month, we're going to be in Craddock.
Okay.
January 15th, Port Norfolk. Cavalier Manor on March 19th. And Ebony Heights in May.
In May, okay. So a whole year out.
So we have a year. This is where we're coming. If it's raining or inclement weather on that Wednesday, we're rescheduling to a Friday.
Okay. Okay.
So these events will occur.
Got it. That's awesome. And when did this, what sparked this relaunching of the program?
The city manager wanted to have the city go to the neighborhoods and help take care of any issues that they're facing.
Got it.
And so he found that there was a Rock the Block program. He said, hey, let's start that up again.
Okay.
But let's change it a little bit. One thing we do have is we have the Rock the Block website, which is rocktheblockportsmouth.com. That is where you will find exactly, what we're looking for, what we're going to be doing. It will also, once we have an event, what we did, and then you can't fix everything in a day.
Right.
So there are going to be some lists that we're going to have to take care of through our normal channels, but we want to take care of those other issues within a month.
Right. Okay.
So, by the time the next one starts, that first neighborhood, all the issues have been taken care of.
I think just being able to go out there and take care of things that can be taken care of that day just builds like a trust equity with the residents, and just to see like, oh, they do care, and not just that they do care, but that there's actually something tangible or visible that they can see the changes, and that just makes a difference in how you feel about where you live, how you feel about your city, how you feel about where you live. And so that's important, and that's exciting that they're going to do that. So we'll definitely put more information out as well on our social media channels about Rock the Block. That's exciting. I know that Chief Jenkins is excited about that program. So that was a peek into our conversation with the Director of Marketing and Communication for the city. And we talked about tourism as well as economic development. So I encourage you to go back and listen to the entire episode. Also, there has been a change in date for Rock the Block. Since we recorded this, the city will be meeting in Prentice Park on Wednesday, July 24th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So come on out and help. And if you can't come out to Prentice Park, be active in your own community. Participate in your civic league. There you'll have opportunities to express your concerns and brainstorm solutions. The police department also has a variety of ways for residents to be involved. You can participate in Faith Behind the Badge, a program that brings Portsmouth faith communities together with the PPD, Portsmouth Police Department to build consensus and capacity to improve Portsmouth communities. Residents can also participate in our Citizens Academy, and this is an opportunity to get a better understanding of how a police department works. And then we even have something for the teens. The police department offers, this is from Community Enhancement again, offers the Explorers program where participants are able to explore a career in law enforcement in like a Boy Scout kind of environment and program. Again, active communities are resilient communities, and resilient communities make for a thriving city. This is a great place to take our final break, and when we return, we'll hear from our chief, and I'll have some final words.
Are you considering a career in law enforcement? Sign on today as a Portsmouth police officer and receive up to $1,500 if you're already Virginia certified. We offer a $1,000 allowance for a bachelor's degree and a $500 allowance for an associate's degree on top of your base pay. Officers can also earn additional income on time spent in court and at community events. Visit our website at portsmouthpd.us for more information on how to apply.
National Night Out will be here before you know it, so mark your calendars for Tuesday, August 6th, and join us at Festival Park for the ultimate community gathering. That's August 6th from 3 to 8 p.m. at Festival Park. See you at National Night Out. So we are back. I've actually had fun recapping the past 8 weeks with you. We've had some wonderful discussions. We've talked about recruitment in episode 4 with Master Police Officer Beth Hoyas. We had an in-depth conversation with Detectives Siniskowski and Jackson about becoming police investigators in episode 5, so you want to be a detective. Coming up, we're going to have conversations with professional standards, which many might know as internal affairs. We'll have a conversation with Parks and Recreation, economic development, and many more. Earlier, I mentioned that active residents create active, resilient communities, or something to that effect. And while this is true, an informed citizenry is also imperative for a thriving city. That's why we're doing this podcast. It's why we provide information to the media. It's why I want you to know about FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act. It's not solely for attorneys or journalists. Residents of Virginia can make FOIA requests to Virginian public agencies. There are times, at times there will be a fee associated, and in the case of the PPD, if we're not able to give you that information, most likely it's because it's part of a current investigation, and we're never going to compromise an investigation. But if you are denied, you'll be provided with why and roughly about like how many documents you were denied. So that's important to know. The PPD is committed to transparency. You can visit portsmouthpd.us.us, click on the About Us and Announcements, and find our 2023 annual reports and strategic plan. This covers information about use of force as well as training, and gives you an overview of how many incidents and calls and things that we've had as a department over the last year. You can also voice your concerns by completing a citizen satisfaction survey or one of the complaint or praise surveys that is on the website as well. We're also committed to accountability, which is why we're pursuing accreditation with CALEA. It's part of the Chief's plan to become the top police department in the state and premier in the nation. In our first episode, we discussed some of the challenges Portsmouth face and some of the things that contribute to crime. We had this discussion with Chief Stephen Jenkins, and so take a listen. We don't want to ruminate on the challenges, but I do think it's important that we discuss them, the few that are pressing or most influential on our city's policy planning and the implementation. So what would you say are the top three challenges that affect crime in the city of Portsmouth?
So, you know, there are some things that in Portsmouth that we must deal with before we even get to root causes of crime. You know, Portsmouth is the smallest of the 7 cities by land mass. Mm-hmm. We are just right around 97,000 individuals. And so our city is surrounded by water. To enter and pretty much exit, you have to go through either a bridge or a tunnel. And of course, now with the tunnel tolls and things of that nature, that makes that a lot more challenging than it used to be. Not to mention, people often comment on the fact that Portsmouth has the highest tax, real estate tax. Mm-hmm. But, you know, what they don't mention is the reason for that is because much of our city's land mass is owned and occupied by federal government. Right. And so those entities do not pay taxes into the city's coffers. And so in order to sustain ourselves, obviously we have to make up differences in that. You know, we have a lot of people who come and occupy some of our jobs that we have here. They come to the city and they work, and then when they leave, they take their money back to the areas that they work in. So, you know, those things that you have to deal with before we even start talking about root causes of crime. Right. When we talk about poverty. Right. And education and things of that nature, and jobs. And so, you know, these things have historically been challenges for Portsmouth and continue to be today. And honestly, what it is going to call for us to be more innovative in how we address these solutions. They are tough decisions that have to be made by leadership at the highest level on deciding on what the priorities are for the city. And then once those priorities are decided upon, a decisive roadmap must be developed on how we're going to get to be able to address some of these root causes. The more resources that we offer people, the more opportunities that we offer people to get them into better situations, better paying jobs, more educated, to be able to fulfill some of the jobs that we have in our local shipyards, our local industries. The better, what you will see is that our crime will change based on that, because people now aren't so much in a survival mode. Right. Now, That doesn't mean that because we have those challenges, it gives individuals an excuse to be able to go out and commit crime.
Right.
Those are just some of the issues that help contribute to it. In the end, a lot of them are still decisions that people make, and oftentimes they're poor decisions. And of course, my job is, and my officer's job is to hold those accountable who break the laws that are necessary for us to be a civilized city and society. And so that's what we as a organization here are committed to doing. Is obviously we want to give people opportunity. We want to give them a chance. We want to plug them into resources. If we know of places that are looking to hire, we want to be able to direct those individuals to those places. But we still must hold you accountable for your actions, and that's the things that we are working towards and ensuring, because ultimately we must have a safe city for
Right.
it to be a vibrant, prosperous city. Before any of that, it must be a safe city.
That's true. I think it's important just to give a little context on that we do have a large portion of the city's land is inhabited by the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
We have different bases and different agencies that are across Portsmouth. And then just talking about just to leave or to enter in, I mean, you hear about like a word of feeling disfranchisement or a word disenfranchisement. Keeping people, it costs to leave.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to work
Yes.
outside the city, it costs to come in city if you want to bring people in here. So that's a big deal to talk about that. It's also important, as you talked about root causes, just touching and giving a little bit of context for the city. Portsmouth has a 20% poverty rate, which we see in studies by the Department of Justice, shows a correlation between poverty as well as crime, and that is about 50% higher than the rest of this area in Virginia. Some of the other challenges that came up in our city's official crime reduction plan, it mentioned that we have a warrant officer shortage, as well as there are a lot of an issue with guns, whether that be ghost guns, stolen guns, or just the capacity that individuals have with the guns that they're using, even if they are legal. Can you talk a little bit about any of those challenges as well?
Sure. So obviously, there is no secret that nationally we've lost a lot of police officers across the country.
Right.
I think training that I attended late last year, said that the state of Virginia probably lost somewhere around 3,000 police officers throughout the state. And obviously we here in Portsmouth are no different. We are dealing with a shortage of officers, and we've been working really hard to try and bring quality police officers to want to serve our city. The fact have some of the challenges that others don't have does make us unique, and it does require a motivated person to come in and be able to deal with some of the challenges that some of our other counterparts may not deal with in the volume that we do. But what I can say in regards to that is that the ones that we do have here that have remained with us, and the ones that we're seeing coming, they are some of the best of the best. There is not a Portsmouth police officer that is here that would not be hired pretty much anywhere in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I have some of the best police officers in the state, and I brag on that all the time because I see the work that they do, and I know their commitment to this city and to the initiative of public safety. As it relates to guns, let's be honest, we have as a society, we have a love affair with guns. And so we have a constitutional amendment that guarantees the right to bear arms, and part of our job is to uphold that right and people's constitutional right to be able to bear arms, and I support that 100%. I do question sometimes whether or not our Constitution intended for weapons of war to be on our streets, but that's not for me to legislate.
Right. It's a legitimate question.
I am police chief. I know what the law says, and I know what my responsibility is. But I also know that individuals who are not supposed to have guns
Right.
Are those individuals who've been convicted of crimes and who are underage, and those individuals must be dealt with in an appropriate manner.
So in this episode, Chief Jenkins, we talked about numerous topics, including his participation in a prestigious University of Chicago law enforcement program that will help our agency accomplish his overall goal to becoming the top agency in the state of Virginia. His participation and practice of seeking continual education is part of the PPD culture, and is most recently, I always want to get this in here, is most recently reflected by our Assistant Chief, Nashayla Nelson, who completed her dissertation this summer and also earned her PhD. It's also reflected in our hiring practices. We offer bonuses based on that. The amount is based on varying levels of educational attainment. Episode 9 is coming to a close, so I want to leave you with this quote from MLK. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Before us, as times before, are many challenges, but when we work together, we can overcome them. So I want to thank you for listening to today's episode, and I want you to remember that this is your city, this is our city, so let's work together to make it great.